Hey everyone, it's Aspen back with another episode of our Forestry Talks podcast, a podcast that explores all things forestry in Alberta. And we're continuing on with our special series right here in the Mackenzie Region, which is the forest capital of Canada in 2024 this year. Super stoked to be here with Jesse Petroskey, a Woodland Supervisor with Tolko. Jesse, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, feeling invigorated. We got the sepia filter going on with the smoke outside, and there was ash on the window, so I'd say things are moving.
Yeah, it is really smoky, and so lots of fires going on in the area. How is that affecting your role here?
For one, it slows things down a little bit just on the safety side to get that out of the way. With the smoke and the heat, it's very hard for some of our layout crews, for our planters, for our bend and break crew to be out there.
Yeah.
They're not getting the fresh air that they're used to, that they love being out there. So we've had to slow some of that down. Other than that, fires, obviously, no TAMs go up. There's government recommendations. There's stipulations for access. It changes our plans on the fly. Fortunately, these are things that we're used to in this industry, but it is a huge impact between these things as well as issuing some of our staff members to dozer boss with the government. It certainly changes the way we operate on the landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been actually such a big program or an initiative or movement of support from the sector that I've noticed in recent years, where we've had a lot of crews that were saying, okay, there's a lot of wildfires going on right now. Let's send some dozer bosses here. How much of that are you seeing at Tolko?
We do see our fair share of it. We've got a handful of certified dozer bosses, as well as some who were recently trained this year and working on certification. We've got at least one full-time staff member dedicated to dozer bossing at the moment, aiming for more. There may be some exports as well, depending on how situations arise in areas like Fort McMurray, if anything starts up at Slave Lake, if anything north of town picks up or gets close to Zama City, Rainbow Lake, even town here. There's plenty of opportunity for our staff to reach out. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And we know that wildfire is such a big part of the landscape, especially here in northern Alberta, where there's so much forest. We've had some significant wildfire years. And something that we talk about a lot in the sector is adaptive management. Can you tell me a little bit about what adaptive management is and how that relates to risk management? Oh,
for sure. Yeah. Adaptive management, for those of us who aren't super familiar with the way that the forest industry works in Alberta, we submit items, they're AOPs, FMPs, they're essentially management plans that predict and inform both the public, the government, and the other stakeholders in the landscape of where we're going to be moving into next, where we plan to harvest. That being said, when a fire happens on the landscape and X number of hectares are impacted, that changes where the wood is now, that changes the status of the wood, it changes everything for us. So when a fire rips through, we try to salvage that before it goes bad. It would be the same if beetles came through. We would try to make the best of that situation. It changes where we go. It changes how much we can cut if wood is completely destroyed. It also changes where we allocate our silviculture funds as well. If it rips through a freshly planted cut block, if it rips through something that was coming up for establishment surveys, plans change left and right.
Yeah, absolutely. I always talk about how adaptive management is par for the course. We recognize that we operate in a landscape that's disturbance driven, and things happen, and we have to be able to respond to them. You talked about how you have to maybe reallocate or change your plans if a wildfire rips through a recently planted stand. We've talked lots about fire salvage, but what does that look like?
If it rips through something that we have just gone through, there are a handful of options. We can go back in the following year to put those trees back into the ground. That keeps our AAC up, meaning that our allowable cut remains the same, or we've recovered it for whatever area that cut block consumed, essentially. Alternatives are when wildfire rips through, we consider that an act of God at times with certain clauses. Meaning that landscape will return to its natural state. Any seed cones that were on the ground will proliferate. We'll have natural reforestation in that area as well.
Yeah.
So it all determines what our surveys, our people on the ground say when it comes to burning through stuff that we've treated. But we do our best to bring it back to what it was in a responsible manner.
Absolutely. So we've talked about maybe one kind of niche or section of your role, but Woodland Supervisor is quite an umbrella.
Absolutely, it is.
What are some of the different things that you're involved in at work, and what do you love most?
I love most the fact that it is a general title. That and the coworkers and my boss. Love that guy. No, we do everything from harvest management or harvest supervision in the wintertime. We also do planning, AOP, digital stuff, ArcGIS, shape files, spatial planning. That's all very interesting as well. I really like that this job is super seasonal, particularly up here where we call it the 3-month war.
Yes, I've heard this term a time or two.
Yes, it does come up fairly often.
Yeah.
Where we only have a handful of weeks, months to harvest when ground conditions are frozen. Because here in high level, we live on a swamp, we eat on a swamp, we sleep on a swamp, we work in a swamp. So when it's frozen, that's when we can put equipment out there without damaging the landscape.
Yeah.
So it's nice when Christmas rolls around, we're all in the thick of it. We're out in the snow-covered trees, bringing them down, huddling up around the fire. When spring rolls around, stuff starts to slow down. We look into the plant, we start doing layout, we put the shorts on and go to work. It's absolutely wonderful to be able to have that variation. It's not a slog to harvest and reforest all year round.
Yeah.
That's nice. It definitely is.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Jesse, what motivated you to get into this type of work?
That really is a bit of a funny story. When I really got into post-secondary after I graduated high school, I was set on becoming a dentist. My mom worked in a dental office, and I'd heard everything from her, and I knew all the terms, scaling, crowns, bridges, everything left and right. And when I finally started going to university, I realized that I wasn't into the urban setting. I wasn't into the vibes, the concrete involved with institution like that. And so I found myself sitting in a computer lab one day, ignoring an in-person lab I was supposed to attend, looking into courses at NAIT that might interest me more from the perspective of my heart, not for the bank account, not for the future, not for any of that. And I just so happened to have a cousin in the forestry program at NAIT at the time who was feeding me information, good intel, only good things. And so I turned my eyes that direction and applied that very day.
Yeah.
And it just so happened I got in at the right time, met absolutely amazing people I've never gotten along with before so well. I met the best friends I've ever had in that program. It was an eye-opener to what my career really could be someday. And that's how I ended up here. Brought me to high level where the opportunity was rife and my friends were. So
awesome.
Very fortunate.
I've heard time and again from anybody who's gone to one of the forestry programs that we have here in Alberta, what a unique community it is to be a part of, how close-knit it is. I've heard phenomenal things about the NAIT program. Can you tell me a little bit more about what your schooling was like? Absolutely.
A big highlight is Kidney Lake. Now, some of us watching may have been to Kidney Lake. We may have heard folks go from Kidney Lake. We may have heard horror stories coming from Kidney Lake as well. But essentially, it's a 5-week camping trip with a whole bunch of strangers, everyone in your class. You're locked up in cabins with them, and you got to survive by the light of fire. And by the end of those 5 weeks, you come out with a family bigger than you've ever had. It is such a tight-knit community, and it starts the program right, and you carry that right through to graduation day. Yeah, there are tears at graduation, but we're all very fortunate that forestry is a very small community in this province.
Absolutely. And what's it like being a part of this forestry community up here in the Mackenzie region?
Unique. Definitely unique. It between us and West Fraser, we're a very tight-knit group on here. We cooperate on the landscape in many ways. Integrated land management, I guess, is a term folks would throw out there, but we try to communicate when it comes to harvest plans, reforestation, road access. Sometimes we even trade wood. It's wonderful. But the community up here is expansive.
Yeah.
We have folks from Zama City, such as Lisa Wardley, who you may have spoken with. We have folks from Rainbow Lake. We have members of industry. We have, medical professionals, plenty of young professionals in town who at some point have interfaced with the forestry community just because of how isolated we are. People don't run out of town and go to the city or go to an event like they would further south in the province. So we have a very strong family community, friendship community here with the events that go on. Who works at the grocery store, who lives down the street, and they know you.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Oh, well, that is so awesome. And so, we're here to celebrate Mackenzie Region's designation as the forest capital of Canada this year, which is so exciting. And I know you're actually really involved in that campaign and initiative. Can you talk a little bit about what your involvement is with the campaign and what the uptake's been like in the community?
Oh, of course. Yeah. So when I first heard about the Forest Capital of Canada, this is my first year hearing about it, actually, when it came to the Mackenzie region. And the take that I've had on it is it's a little bit different for everyone who's involved with it and everyone who touches it from the public as well. Mm-hmm. To me, it's an initiative to, for one, get more people out in the woods and enjoying this resource that we have. It belongs to all of us here. It's public, it's crown, And for two, it's to raise awareness about the people who operate in that resource, such as forestry professionals, oil and gas, hunters, stakeholders, trappers, so many people out there. It would be absolutely wonderful to have more people out there and enjoying what we have. My involvement particularly, I am on the committee, one of the members, albeit a on and off contributor, but it's been really nice to get out in the booths, to see the community, to see how interested they are in engaging with us. Just the other week, we'd had a booth at our Canada Day celebrations in town, and we had folks coming up to us. They were very, very, very interested in the seedlings that we were handing out. And never before, until I saw it with my own eyes, would I have believed that people would be that interested in trees.
Yeah.
But everyone wanted to know. They wanted to know what we do with them, how we plant them, if they really survive out there in the woods on their own. They look so innocent, those tiny little guys. But the uptake and the feedback we've had from people who've attended our events and seen our booths has been lovely. The engagement has gone up twofold, threefold from the public. And we just keep getting more and more initiatives handed to us and more and more opportunities coming away with some of the non-for-profits that we work with.
Yeah.
The reception has been wonderful, and I'm so privileged to be a part of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great to hear. And I always love those opportunities when you get to chat, to, meet the public and talk a little bit more about what you do. What are folks most surprised to learn about?
The biggest one that gets folks every time is how many trees we put in the ground every year. We're not just taking trees. We're not just harvesting the resource, utilizing it, shipping it overseas like so many people may believe. We put at least 3 times as many trees as we harvest into the ground. Just this year alone, we hinged on 19 million trees planted.
Wow.
So our reforestation program is immense.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that we have involved with our silviculture programs are locals. For example, our Bend and Break program, entirely local crews. And there's so much opportunity for people to get involved with tree planting, with reforestation, with open houses. They're actually amazed with what we do out there, and that we're not just taking, we're actually giving back, and we do hold ourselves accountable, that we do care. We're not the big bad guy out in the field taking the trees. And when people see that side for themselves, it's absolutely amazing. You can see it in their eyes.
Yeah.
That there is faith in the world again.
Yeah, the reciprocal nature of the sector, to your point, how it's not just an extractive industry, but that we're bringing the resource back to the land and making sure that, everything that we do is sustainable. I'm really excited that you brought up the Bend and Break program, because what not a lot of people know about is that the job doesn't just end at planting the trees and putting the trees back into the ground, but there's actually quite a process after that, about, I think, 14 years.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about what that process looks like and what the Bend and Break program is all about.
Yeah, certainly. I'm not the end-all be-all authority on the Bend and Break program. I actually haven't been too engaged with it this season. But coworkers that I share the office with are directly in charge of that. And I actually ran out into some of our contractors the other day as well and had a good chat with them. Essentially, our Bend and Break program is an alternative that we hope to continue into future years that replaces the need for herbicide, whether that be spot application in person, whether it be aerial herbicide as well. That's an initiative that we as a company have taken on ourselves to, for one, benefit the stakeholders, benefit the landscape, and hopefully create a healthier atmosphere out there for these trees and the rest of the forest to come back in. Bend and Break involves bringing down, so as a conifer operator, we replant conifer trees.
Yeah.
As many of us may know, Aspen trees are extremely prolific. They can be quite the competition for the
Grow
small.
like a weed.
That's right. That's right. And as an alternative to herbiciding, we manually cut those in half, bend them, break them away from every seedling that we planted in a block. Now, we're not able to reach as vast expanses as we would with aerial herbicide. The program is a little bit smaller in its infancy stages right now. But essentially what it does is it opens a swath around our small seedlings so they can gain light, get the nutrients. There's less direct competition for them while they establish their root system. And it's an excellent employment opportunity for many members of the local community.
Yeah.
So it's been a win on all sides, and we are soon coming up to some additional surveys to see how those are performing. So we're looking very much forward to seeing the impact that we've had out there with Bend and Break.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about it. And, you make a good point about how you as a conifer operator have to bring back conifer species. I think that's such an important understanding, is that whatever you're harvesting is what you have to bring back. You're not bringing back a different type of forest or bringing back the same type of forest that was there before.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge one. When I run into a member of the public and they ask, what do I do for work? And I say, hey, I'm a forester. I'm a forest technologist. We work out in the landscape, and the gut impact they have is, so you're taking the trees. And I go, you're right. You most certainly are right. But we're also putting them back, and we hold ourselves liable. And not only that, but we put back the same species that are there.
Yeah.
Now, the follow-up argument is, well, you're only putting back merchantable tree species, things that you can harvest down the line. And I said, well, yes, because those are the ones that need the assistance to come back. There are spaces that come back naturally. There are tree species that come back naturally. Not all of them, but shrubs, grasses, forbs, flowers, other small minor species that occupy the woods will all come back naturally. They're extremely virile in there. And so nature always prevails when it comes to shrubs. When it comes to anything smaller than a tree, nature will always prevail.
Well, and I think the difference too is that if you were a deciduous operator, because we do have a lot of deciduous operators in the province as well, it's still their responsibility to make sure that deciduous forest comes back thriving and healthy. And of course, the regeneration strategies might look a little bit different from some of the regeneration strategies that a conifer operator might need to employ, but it's still just woven into the DNA of what sustainable forest management looks like to make sure that that's coming back.
That's right. Yeah. And we do, even with our block shapes, we try to mimic what was natural. Shape of wildfire isn't grids on a checkerboard, and neither is our harvesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. How the way that we harvest has changed over time. I think it's so fascinating. I call it kind of the anatomy of a harvest block, if you will. But there are these huge irregular blobs with patches left behind. Talk a little bit about that and what you're actually looking at when you see a harvest area.
I, for one, am a fan of sitting on the couch and on days of boredom and scouring Google Maps imagery. And I like to zoom over the forest and see these little patches. They do look like blobs, little amoebas on the landscape. And a lot of that has to do with stand types. A lot of it has to do with natural features that we avoid as well. There are very intense procedures for buffering sensitive sites, cultural sites, water courses. We also have timing restrictions for sensitive species out there. So all these things, they all amount to what looks like a massive collage of a mess on a digital screen somewhere. We've got so many layers, shapes, colors, and we design cut blocks around all these layers to ensure that minimal impact is had. We're avoiding key areas, safety for operators as well. We won't operate on the steep slopes. We don't get too close to water. Things like that is what causes us to mimic this natural shape. And it just so happens as well that mimics the natural shape of wildfire on the landscape. We make a pointed effort to make it as natural as we can for wildlife, for people, viewshed management, everything out there.
Are you part of the group that gets to design what these harvest areas look like?
I'm not directly involved with it, but we do have input with layout. A lot of us also look over the shoulder of some of our planners and get to see the inside scoop and what they're thinking. So we do have some involvement, and I'm sure someday as we get more senior in our roles in the industry, I think we'll all end up driving a desk being a planner. So it's good to see.
It's so funny. I have conversations with so many great forestry professionals across the province, and I always ask them, like, what motivated you to get into this industry? And they're like, oh, I just loved being outside, loved being out in nature every day. Yeah. It's, such a big motivation for me. And then eventually they work themselves to a point in their career where they're like, I haven't seen the outdoors in ages.
Yep. Everyone ends up in an office with no windows.
Yeah. Oh, no. But I mean, that love for the forest is really what connects us all to it and what drives you to come out and work in a sector like this.
It really is. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, my last question for you, Jesse, is coming back to this incredible designation, Forest Capital of Canada. What makes you so excited about that designation and what makes this area so special?
The Mackenzie Region is a special one. For one, it's very, very secluded. Not many people will ever make it through this part of the world, let alone Alberta citizens. It draws attention to what we have out here, the unique landscape. We've got a hill on each side of town, and everything is essentially water and low-lying areas between. The Mackenzie region is unique for its people. We're a very cultural area. We have plenty of Indigenous initiatives. Our trap lines are huge out here, larger than anywhere else in the province. We have so many river systems and watersheds that occupy our land as well. It's so nice to bring all of this to light and show people what we do way up here out of the public eye. Our wood is in so many homes across the country, across, nations outside of ours as well. And it's all started right here, just outside of High Level. It's very humbling.
Awesome. Right on. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jesse. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Aspen. This is a great opportunity.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Forestry Talks, a podcast that explores all things forestry in Alberta. If you're curious to learn more, check out our website, albertaforestproducts.ca or loveabforest.ca. I'm your host, Aspen Dudzik, and I'll see you next time.
This series is proudly produced by the team at Road 55. Road 55 creates content that connects. For more information, visit our website at road55.ca.